In this moment, following a time of great upheaval for our U.S. education system, our children need our unshakable support and belief more than ever. We at Presence are innovators in special education and mental health service delivery. We're coming together with visionary leaders to share ideas on transforming the paradigm and how we can address the challenges facing our children. Dr. Susan Enfield is the former superintendent from Washoe County School District in Reno, Nevada. Prior to this, she served as superintendent for Highline Public Schools in Washington for 10 years. She was named Superintendent of the Year by the National School Foundation Association in 2018 and was the 2022 Washington State Superintendent of the Year. Susan, how did you progress from the classroom to multiple superintendencies?
So I always wanted to be a teacher. I actually taught my stuffed animals and dolls when I was little and really had no aspirations to leave the classroom once I became a high school English, ELL, and journalism teacher. But I had the opportunity to step away from the classroom and be a school improvement coach for an organization, and really no aspirations to even being a principal, much less a superintendent, but saw an ad for the urban superintendent's program at Harvard in Education Week. And my father encouraged me to apply, and I did. And really introduced to some extraordinary superintendents, really outstanding leaders in this work, and realized that I could impact the lives of children from the district office level. The role of the superintendent has evolved, but the way in which it has evolved made it one that appealed to me, in that I could make decisions in collaboration with my team, with families, with community, that could positively impact the trajectory of tens of thousands of children's lives over time. It's a tremendous responsibility, but it's also a tremendous opportunity to make sure that every child in public school gets the education that they need and deserve.
What are the lessons you've taken from one district to another?
In my mind, there's no better definition of equity than to know every student by name, a name pronounced correctly with respect and affection, by strength, because every student brings gifts and assets with them, and by need, whether that's academic needs, social emotional needs, what have you, and that they are given every opportunity through their school career, and that they're not denied access to opportunity, so that when they graduate, that diploma is a ticket to a meaningful future that they have mapped out for themselves and that we as educators have prepared them for. That is what I fundamentally take with me wherever I go, in whatever format, as an educator first and as a leader. Being grounded in who you are and what your values are and what matters to you. Health and family first, always. Always, always, always. We want to put health and family first. I expect a lot from the adults with whom I work on behalf of children, but I can't have them depleted if I want them to show up every day giving their all to kids. And the other lesson that I've learned, and it's a hard one, and it's one that people struggle with, but I think it's important, and I'm very clear about naming this, that it's clear that simply maintaining the status quo, while it may work for some, it won't work for all. And we know that maintaining the status quo means that too many of our students will not achieve at the levels we know they're capable of and have the futures that we know they're entitled to. It's important for us as adults who have committed our lives to working in public education to understand that in order to do right by every child in our system, we will make our lives as the adults harder. That's how the equation works. To do right by all children, the adults have to make their lives harder. The minute we as the adults are comfortable, the minute we're doing that which we know and are familiar with, regardless of whether it's actually meeting the needs of our children and families, is the day that we've lost our mission, right? We've lost our purpose. And so I think it's important to name that, because this is hard work. It's really hard work that I think is only becoming harder in this day and age. And I think naming it is really important, because I can't always make it easier, but I can acknowledge as a leader with my colleagues how hard it is.
How can schools manage the impending expiration of ESSER funds and potential budget cuts?
The reality is that those of us who have been working in public education, like I have for many decades, budget cuts are not new to us. We have to be honest as pre-K through 12 system leaders to say we can't do this alone. We will never have the resources within the public education space to meet the needs of all of our children and family, and that's amplified now after the pandemic. And we are highly skilled, sadly, at figuring out how to do more with less and being strategic and being creative with the funds that we do have. to do this work. I will, though, again emphasize where this is the importance of partnerships. It just cannot be overstated because our school systems never could and never will be able to do it alone. So how are we reaching out to our local community partners and others to help make sure that we're creating robust school systems that meet the needs of kids and adults? And I think it's important to remember that, hard as it is when you're in the thick of it, that you will get through it and that times do get better.
What specific advice would you give administrators that are implementing large-scale change?
I think as leaders, we sometimes underestimate how much it matters for us to acknowledge when we make a hard decision, the impact it has on people. While that acknowledgement doesn't take away how difficult or painful their experience may be, it at least lets them know that you understand that and that you say it and you name it and own, and if needed, apologize for it. Leading people through the change management process without judgment, with support, but also with urgency and clarity of expectation, that I'm not asking if you want to do this. I'm letting you know that this is what needs to happen. Here's why it needs to happen. Because here's the other thing, rationale is important. And as leaders, we sometimes downplay the why behind what we're asking. It's also really important to say, what do you need? Our teams will feel that we're just dumping something on them and that they have to go figure it out on their own. So to constantly say, do you have the tools, the resources, the supports that you need, or is there more that you need from me for you to get this done? Walking your people through the process, taking care of them through the process is critically important. And I also think making sure that in the end, again, you are clear on the why behind the change.
So let's shift the conversation a little bit to technology. Presence, we are a special education and mental health service provider, and we do that through teletherapy, remote services. So technology is near and dear to our heart. How do you think technology can really play a role in many of the challenges that are facing school districts today?
As a superintendent, I am always looking for new and better ways that we can serve students by supporting our staff in giving them the tools and the resources to make their jobs a little bit easier or more manageable. Because as we all know, those of us who have been teachers, it's a hard job and it's harder than it's ever been. And so I think as leaders, we have an obligation to seek out those solutions that will help those people working in our schools do the best job that they can, whether that's through bus routing software, whether it's through additional, teletherapy to augment the really extraordinary work that our folks do in person. Those things matter, and they make us, to your point, not just a more efficient organization, but a better organization where people feel that the organization itself sees them as people, sees them as important, and is investing in them to do the really great work that we need them to do for our kids each and every day.
Why is advocating for the elevation of women in education so important to you?
We are living in a time of challenges that are growing not just in magnitude, but in complexity. We need as wide an array of leadership approaches to solving these challenges as possible. And that means broadening who we have in leadership. I am an unapologetic advocate for advancing women in leadership in the education space. Advancing more women into leadership roles in our education system doesn't just benefit the system itself, but in turn it benefits our kids, and that's what matters the most. And we know that while it's improving the number of women in leadership roles in education, it still isn't nearly where it needs to be. And so I think it's important that we keep pushing for women to see themselves in leadership positions.
Are there some, real examples that you've seen that have really helped elevate women in education?
Thankfully, there are more and more entities that are really seeing the need for investing in women as leaders. And I think Women Leading Ed is a fabulous organization that brings female leaders together in a way that doesn't just provide fellowship and sponsorship, but also, I think, real learning, real actionable steps that you can take to grow as a leader, advance yourself as a leader. One of the best bits of advice I ever got was never turn down a job you haven't been offered yet. And I think as women, we too often second guess ourselves and say, oh, that job sounds really interesting, but I'm not sure if I'm ready. I'm not sure if, I always say, go for it. Now, I'm not saying that you should go for a job that you are, wildly unqualified for, but if there's a position that you have the skill set and experience for, you're never completely ready. We're all learners. We're all a work in progress. We need people in our lives who are going to believe in us, but then support us and in some case push us maybe to take that leap, even if we don't think we're quite there yet. And getting yourself ready to talk about your work is a skill set, and practice doesn't always make perfect, but it makes better.
What should leaders be thinking about as they wrap this year and look ahead to the next school year?
Number one, celebrate. Celebrate what you and your team accomplished this year and do it constantly. The end of the school year is always a time for celebration with commencement and all of that. But take a moment to acknowledge for your team the good work that you've done over the course of the year as a team. I think celebrating progress is incredibly important because, as I said, this work is hard. And so to keep people's morale up, they need to know that they are seen and that their work is appreciated, right? And that while we're not there yet, we're getting there. We're making progress. So celebrate and acknowledge progress. And then reflect on, as a leader, what you didn't maybe get accomplished this year or what you wish you had done differently, to sort of think through what are you going to adjust and change potentially for the upcoming school year. So celebrate progress, reflect on what you would like to see different moving forward, and really think through what is it going to take to move on that change, because we talked about how hard the change management process is. And then the third and most important thing is rest. Rest. I said at the beginning, health and family first is one of my mantras. Put your work cell phone away, put the laptop away, unplug for at least a little bit. And frankly, you need to do it for the staff you work with and the children that you serve, because this work, as wonderful as it is, it can be depleting. And so after you've done all that work of celebration and reflection and planning for the following year, just hit the pause button.
What's sort of your mantra and your mindset about really bringing that energy to your job, to your profession, and how to help people see a good way to think about that?
I make a distinction between the job and the work. And whether you're a superintendent, a principal, a teacher, whatever it is, the job is the icky stuff, right? It's criticism, the controversy. It's in some cases just the mundane, that we have to endure. All of that stuff is the job. But if you can separate that from the work, and the work of serving children and families is a gift. It's a gift every single day. So what I say is there are days where the job is tough, but every day the work of serving children and families is a gift. And I think that distinction has kept me in the job, because the job will grind you down, but the work will lift you up. And if you can keep that, it will sustain you on the hard days and hopefully sustain you over years in doing this work, because our kids need us in this work for the long haul.
Why should more schools embrace technology-based solutions?
Our children can't afford for us not to seek out every possible solution to provide them with the resources and supports they need and deserve so that they graduate prepared for whatever future they choose for themselves.
Can you share why you're hopeful for our students' future?
As educators, we get up every day believing that the impossible is possible. What gives me hope is the people that I work alongside in the education space, who show up and give their best and sacrifice to make sure that our children can have a future that without a great education might not be possible.
The Visionary Voices video series convenes expert education leaders to explore promising new instructional approaches and ways to reimagine the future where children can thrive. Follow along for thought-provoking conversations and discover actionable insights that will empower us to build a new health and education system, one that really puts the whole child at the forefront.